The late afternoon sun filtered through the windows of Corner Bakery as Rachel Martinez checked her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. Her blind date was supposed to meet her at 4:30, and it was now 4:35. She glanced down at her 6-year-old son Diego, who was sitting across from her at the small cafe table, carefully coloring in his activity book with the intense concentration only a child could muster. Rachel had almost canceled this date 5 times. Her babysitter had gotten sick that morning, her backup sitter was out of town, and her mother, who usually helped in emergencies, was working a double shift at the hospital. Rachel had called her friend Maria, who'd set up this blind date, ready to apologize and reschedule. "Absolutely not," Maria had said firmly. "Rachel, you haven't been on a date in 2 years. David seems really nice, and he specifically said he was looking for someone who understood that real life comes with complications. But I can't bring a 6-year-old on a blind date," Rachel had protested. "That's not fair to him, and it's mortifying for me." "Trust me," Maria had insisted. "Just be honest about the situation. If he can't handle it, then he's not the right guy anyway." Now, sitting in the bakery with Diego happily occupied by his coloring book and a chocolate chip cookie, Rachel wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. She was wearing her best casual dress, a navy blue number that was appropriate for both a first date and an afternoon with a child, and she'd spent extra time on her makeup to hide the exhaustion that seemed permanently etched under her eyes these days. Working as a dental hygienist, while raising Diego alone meant her days started at 5:30 a.m. and rarely ended before 9 p.m. Between work, Diego's school activities, homework help, and the endless logistics of single parenthood, Rachel couldn't remember the last time she'd done something just for herself. "Mommy, is the man coming soon?" Diego asked, looking up from his drawing of what appeared to be a dinosaur wearing a cape. "I want to show him my superhero T-Rex." "I'm not sure, sweetheart," Rachel said, checking her phone again. "Maybe he's just running a little late." The bell above the bakery door chimed, and Rachel looked up to see a man scanning the cafe. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with kind brown eyes and dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, professional but approachable. When his eyes met hers, he smiled and headed toward their table. Rachel felt her stomach clench with anxiety as she prepared to launch into her apology. "Rachel?" he said as he approached. "I'm David Chen. I'm so sorry I'm late. Parking was impossible. And then I had to find somewhere to buy these." He held up a small bag from the toy store next door. "David, hi," Rachel said, starting to stand. "I need to apologize. I know this is completely inappropriate, but my babysitter got sick and I couldn't find anyone else to watch Diego. And I should have just canceled, but my friend Maria insisted." "Whoa, slow down," David said gently, his smile growing wider. "You must be Diego," he said, turning to the little boy who was staring up at him with undisguised curiosity. "I heard you might be joining us today, so I brought you something." David reached into the bag and pulled out a small box of premium-colored pencils and a new coloring book featuring superheroes. Diego's eyes went wide with delight. "Really? For me?" Diego asked, looking between David and his mother. "Absolutely," David said, taking the seat beside Diego rather than across from Rachel. "But I have to warn you, I'm pretty competitive when it comes to coloring. Think you can handle some friendly competition?" Diego giggled, a sound that never failed to make Rachel's heart swell. "I'm really good at coloring. I stay inside the lines and everything." "Impressive," David said seriously. "What about this guy?" He pointed to a drawing of Superman on one of the pages. "Think we could make his cape purple instead of red?" As Diego launched into an enthusiastic explanation of why purple would be an excellent choice for Superman's cape, Rachel stared at David in amazement. This wasn't how she'd imagined this conversation going. She'd expected awkwardness, polite excuses, maybe even annoyed disappointment. Instead, David was engaging with her son as naturally as if he'd known him for years. "I can't believe you brought him coloring supplies," Rachel said softly when Diego became absorbed in his new art project. David shrugged, his expression warm. "Maria mentioned you had a son, and that childcare could be challenging. I figured if he was going to be here, we might as well make sure he had fun, too. But this isn't exactly a traditional first date. Good, David said, flagging down the waitress. Traditional first dates are overrated. They're all about pretending to be perfect versions of ourselves. This is much better. I get to meet the real you, the you that comes with someone very important who's clearly the center of your world. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. You have no idea how rare that attitude is. Then you've been dating the wrong guys, David said simply. Can I buy you both some coffee and cookies? I want to hear about this superhero T-Rex I keep hearing about. For the next 2 hours, Rachel found herself having the most natural, enjoyable date of her adult life. David split his attention seamlessly between her and Diego, asking thoughtful questions about her work while also showing genuine interest in Diego's elaborate superhero backstories. So T-Rex Superman can fly, but only on Tuesdays? David asked seriously, examining Diego's latest drawing. Only on Tuesdays and Fridays, Diego corrected. The other days he has to use his super running. That makes perfect sense, David nodded. Flying every day would probably get exhausting. Rachel watched this interaction with growing amazement. Most adults either ignored children completely or talked down to them in that patronizing voice that made her cringe. David spoke to Diego like a fellow human being with valid opinions about dinosaur superpowers. What do you do for work? Rachel asked when Diego became absorbed in a particularly complex coloring challenge. I'm in tech, David said. I started a company that develops educational software for schools. Nothing too exciting, but it pays well and lets me make my own schedule, which is important because... He paused, seeming to consider his words carefully. Because? Rachel prompted. Because I have a daughter, David said. Lily, she's 8. She lives with her mom in Portland, but she spends summers with me and every other weekend. Being flexible with my time is crucial. Rachel felt something settle in her chest. Relief, understanding, recognition. You're a single parent, too. Divorced parent, David clarified. The divorce was amicable, but it's been an adjustment. Learning to build a life that works around shared custody. Dating when your schedule revolves around someone else's needs. He glanced at Diego. I imagine you understand that better than most. I really do, Rachel said softly. Mommy? Can David come to my soccer game on Saturday? Diego asked suddenly, looking up from his coloring. We're playing the Blue Lightning and they're really good, but I think we can beat them if we have enough people cheering. Rachel felt heat creep up her neck. Diego, honey, David might be busy on Saturday. Actually, I'd love to come, David said. If that's okay with your mom. What time is the game? 10 o'clock at Roosevelt Park, Diego said excitedly. I play midfielder, which means I run everywhere and try to get the ball to Tommy because he's our best scorer. Sounds like an important job, David said. I'll definitely be there. After they left the bakery, David walked them to Rachel's car, a reliable but aging Honda that showed the wear of daily life with a 6-year-old. Diego, it was great meeting you, David said, crouching down to the boy's level. Thanks for sharing your art with me today. Thanks for the coloring stuff, Diego replied, clutching his new supplies. Are you going to be my mom's boyfriend now? Diego! Rachel gasped, mortified, but David just laughed. That's up to your mom, buddy. But I definitely hope we can all hang out again soon. As Diego climbed into his car seat, David turned to Rachel with an expression she couldn't quite read. Rachel, I want you to know that this was the best first date I've ever had. Even though it wasn't really a date. Especially because it wasn't really a date, David said. It was real life. It was getting to see you as a mom, watching how you balance Diego's needs with your own, seeing the way he looks at you like you're his whole world. That tells me more about who you are than a dozen perfect dinners at fancy restaurants ever could. Rachel felt her throat tighten. Most guys run when they realize dating me means dating both of us. Then most guys are idiots, David said firmly. Diego is amazing. He's creative, he's funny, he's got great taste in superhero modifications. Having him as part of the package isn't a complication. Rachel, it's a bonus. 3 months later, Rachel stood on the sidelines of Roosevelt Park, watching Diego sprint across the soccer field while David cheered loudly beside her. It was the third game David had attended, and by now the other parents had started assuming they were married. "Go, Diego!" David shouted as her son successfully passed the ball to Tommy. "Beautiful play!" "You know you don't have to come to every game," Rachel said, though she was smiling as she said it. "I don't want you to feel obligated." David turned to her with an expression of mock offense. "Are you kidding?" "This is the most exciting soccer season in Roosevelt Park history. Diego's team is undefeated, and I'm pretty sure my cheering is the deciding factor." "Pretty sure, huh?" "Absolutely certain," David grinned. "Besides, where else am I going to get this level of athletic entertainment and post-game ice cream discussions?" The post-game ice cream had become their tradition. After each game, they'd go to the little shop near the park where Diego would analyze every play while working his way through a double-scoop cone, and David would listen with the same attention he'd give a business presentation. "David," Rachel said, as Diego scored a goal and the small crowd of parents erupted in cheers. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why are you so good with kids?" "I mean, you have Lily, but this comes so naturally to you." David was quiet for a moment, watching Diego celebrate with his teammates. "Honestly, I think it's because I remember what it felt like to be a kid whose dad wasn't around much. My parents divorced when I was 7, and my father, he tried, but he was always treating time with me like an obligation rather than a privilege." He paused, then continued. "When Lily was born, I promised myself I'd never make her feel like she was an inconvenience or a complication in my life. And when I met you and Diego, I realized that same principle applies to dating. If I'm going to be in your life, I need to be in both your lives completely and enthusiastically." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. Over the past 3 months, David had become woven into their daily routine in ways that felt natural rather than forced. He picked Diego up from school when Rachel worked late, helped with homework without being asked, and remembered every detail of Diego's interests and concerns. More importantly, he'd introduced them to Lily during one of her weekend visits, and the kids had bonded immediately over their shared love of elaborate fantasy games and their parents' terrible jokes. "I love you," Rachel said, the words coming out before she'd fully decided to say them. David's face lit up with a smile that transformed his entire expression. "I love you too. Both of you. All of us, actually. This whole chaotic, beautiful, perfectly imperfect family we're building." On the field, Diego was running toward them, his face flushed with victory and excitement. "Mom!" "David, did you see my goal?" "Did you see how I got around the defender?" "We saw everything," David said, lifting Diego up in a victory hug. "That was professional-level soccer, my friend. Can we get ice cream now? And can we call Lily and tell her about the game?" "Absolutely," Rachel and David said in unison, then looked at each other and laughed. Walking toward the ice cream shop, Diego's hand in hers and David's arm around her shoulders, Rachel reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. 3 months ago, she'd been terrified to bring her son on a blind date, convinced it would ruin any chance at romance. Instead, she'd discovered that the right person doesn't see your child as a complication to navigate around. They see them as an essential part of who you are, worthy of love and attention in their own right. David hadn't just accepted Diego. He'd embraced him, creating space in his life and heart for a ready-made family. "Next weekend is Lily's visit," David said as they settled into their usual booth at the ice cream shop. "I was thinking maybe we could all go to the zoo together." "Can we see the dinosaur exhibit?" Diego asked excitedly. "Lily said they have a T-Rex skeleton that's even bigger than me." "We can see whatever you want," David promised. "As long as your mom is okay with it." Rachel looked around the table, at Diego, animated with sugar and victory, at David, who listened to her son's chatter with genuine interest, at the life they were building together, one soccer game and ice cream cone at a time. "I think that sounds perfect," she said. And for the first time since Diego was born, Rachel truly believed that sometimes the best things in life really do come when you stop trying to hide who you are and start trusting that the right person will love all of you. Complications, children, chaos, and all.